Good afternoon, dear friends and colleagues. First, on behalf of the member states of the Group of Friends in Defense of the Charter of the United Nations, I would like to give you a warm welcome to this special event aimed at commemorating and promoting the International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace. The General Assembly established it on December 12, 2018, and we have celebrated it every April 24th. As you know, today's event theme is the transformative power of unity, advancing multilateralism and diplomacy for a better future of peace and development for all. We hope that after the conclusion of our discussions later today, we have managed to identify potential ways and means, first, to make an inclusive multilateral system the best option to overcome common challenges and emerging threats through collective actions and the tools provided by diplomacy and the UN Charter. And second, to ensure a strict compliance and adherence to the Charter of the United Nations in both its letters and spirit, and reflect on the achievements of the United Nations over the past 80 years, as we look into the future to realize the vision of San Francisco for a world of peace and development for all. A concept note was prepared and circulated ahead of today's special event to steer our discussions, which are being transmitted live via UN Web TV. More importantly, we have a stellar panel for today, which includes representatives from the principal organs of the United Nations, as well as the High Representative for the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations, and the chair of the Non-Aligned Movement, who led the process towards the establishment of this International Day back in 2018, at a time when Venezuela was chairing the movement. We are grateful to them for having joined us in celebrating this day. Similarly, we would like to express our appreciation to everyone for joining us today, despite the multiple ongoing meetings for which many of you have received high-level visits. Excellencies, I will now deliver some brief remarks in my national capacity. Dear ambassadors, we are in a moment of great turbulence, and we are currently under uncharted waters. These phrases are repeated nowadays, reflecting the feeling that the crisis facing multilateralism has reached the highest level yet known. The unilateralism that the current government of the United States of America proposes to impose on the world has changed. In a few weeks, we have gone from the so-called rules-based order to a system that privileges the use of force and coercion over international legality. The multilateral system and the set of rules that together we have agreed upon over the last 80 years now seem to be an obstacle to the dominance of a single country over the world, and the United Nations is seen as a globalist enemy that has to be degraded in its capabilities, resorting to the funding efforts as one of several instruments to undermine the entire system. The desperate quest to maintain its hegemony has led the government of the United States of America to abandon the minimum objectives of multilateralism: the maintenance of international peace and security, the promotion of human rights, the fostering of sustainable development, and the social progress of our nations through cooperation in line with the letter and spirit of the Charter of the United Nations. All are now at risk of being rolled back. Dear delegates, the drive for unilateral domination is historically regressive and runs counter to the global trend towards a plurality of power centers. The new multipolar world that is currently emerging requires an inclusive and effective multilateral system to respond to the needs of our peoples and neutralize hegemonic aggressions. Venezuela aspires to a multicentric world without rival blocs fighting for world domination, to a world in which divergent political and economic systems coexist and interact with each other under the preeminence of the multilateralism proposed in the Charter of the United Nations, with the principle of the sovereign equality of states as a guide, and resorting to cooperation and diplomacy as the means to address the threats that lie ahead. It is up to us to ensure that the international system we have built together is not condemned to the same fate as the extinct League of Nations due to its inability to respond to the challenges of the 21st century and the lack of political will of the traditional powers to accept the emergence of a new world in which we, the developing countries, are called upon to play a much greater role. Excellencies, as a member state of this organization, we must oppose practices that clash with the agreements and principles reached by multilateralism over the past 80 years. The use of pretext to justify interventions and unleash wars, the continued interference in international affairs of states, the use of selective approaches in the fulfillment of international obligations, the criminalization of migrants, and the violation of their human rights, the imposition of unilateral coercive measures, the promotion of trade wars that undermine the right to development of peoples, the coercive practice against officials of the United Nations system or the International Criminal Court, and in general, the attempts to replace international law with a make-right approach are all unacceptable practices against which we must stand together or take a common stand in defense of the system that belongs to all of us and that has yielded the longest period of peace in the history of humanity. The United Nations, as the best manifestation of multilateralism and diplomacy, has an essential role to play in responding to these common challenges. Today, we must return to the spirit of unity that prevailed in San Francisco 80 years ago. Therefore, let us join our efforts to preserve the milestones we have achieved together and continue advancing with the Charter of the United Nations as our common compass toward the future of peace, development, and human rights that our peoples demand. I thank you. At this stage, and as part of the opening segment of this event, I would like to now give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Ivor Richard Fung, Chef de Cabinet of the President of the 79th session of the General Assembly of the United Nations. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Excellencies. The President of the General Assembly, His Excellency Philemon Yang, really wanted to be with you this afternoon, but he has a last-minute problem that could not allow him to be here, and he has asked me to deliver his statement. I quote, "Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, in just a few days, we will mark the International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace. It is a call to defend dialogue over division, diplomacy over destruction, and unity over multilateralism. And it is a moment to remember and recommit to the principles of the United Nations Charter, which guided our multilateral efforts for 80 decades. Excellencies, just as it was 80 years ago, we once again face a world of profound division. Conflicts are escalating. International law is being tested. The very principles of multilateralism are under strain. Tension and mistrust among states are on the rise. Military expenditures have increased exponentially. But let us remember, multilateralism has never been easy. It was not easy in 1945 when it emerged from the ruins of war and deep mistrust. It was not easy during the decades of Cold War tension, competition, and arms race. And it is not easy today as the war undergoes rapid transformations. Through it all, multilateralism has been and remains our best hope for peace and prosperity for everyone. That is why it cannot be stagnant or inflexible. Diplomacy must evolve to meet today's realities. The Pact for the Future, adopted at the Summit of the Future, is our roadmap for this renewal. It strengthens diplomacy to prevent conflict. It reaffirms the rule of law over the rule of force. It calls for results that restore trust. And it places the UN Charter back at the heart of global cooperation. But a roadmap is only useful if we follow it. And the pact is only meaningful if we implement it. As President of the General Assembly, I am committed to the implementation, and I have already launched a series of dialogues to specifically advance this effort. Excellencies, the real test for multilateralism is not in the halls of the United Nations. It is in the decisions we make and the actions we take. People must see that multilateralism delivers, not just for the powerful, but for all. That means reforming the international financial system so developing countries have a real seat at the table. Meeting climate commitment so vulnerable nations are not left behind. Advancing disarmament so peace is not just a vision, but a reality. And most of all, it means living up to and upholding the principles of the United Nations Charter. Because peace without principles is fragile, and diplomacy without rules is meaningless. As we approach 24 April, let us not only commemorate multilateralism, let us strengthen it. Let us show that global cooperation still matters, that it can still deliver, that in times of crisis, we choose unity over division. Let us prove that multilateralism works when we choose to make it work. I thank you. End of quote.
Thank you, Dr. Fung, for his remarks, and through him, we convey our best wishes for a speedy recovery to the President of the General Assembly, who was unable to join us in person today. And now I would like to give the floor to His Excellency Miroslav Jencha, Assistant Secretary General for Europe, Central Asia, and the Americas, who will deliver a message on behalf of the Secretary General of the United Nations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, all protocol observed. Excellencies, colleagues, it is my honor to represent the Secretary General in this special event commemorating the International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace. I would like to thank the group of friends in defense of the Charter of the United Nations for bringing us together today. We are clearly in a period of wrenching global transformation. Some are referring to this moment as an inflection point or a historical crossroads. The post-Cold War era has ended. We are in a period of emerging multipolarity. This new era is already marked by deepening divisions and retrenchment. As we mark the 80th anniversary of the United Nations this year, established in the aftermath of the Second World War to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, it is worth remembering that the organization was founded exactly for moments of turmoil such as this one. The architects of the United Nations Charter recognized that multilateralism and diplomacy are not mere lofty ideals suited for times of peace and harmony. They are actual lifelines when geopolitical tensions escalate, when competition between states challenges international law, when states lose trust in each other. And yet, we have to recognize that many states, as well as their people, are skeptical and have been for some time of how multilateralism is working for them. They have profound grievances because of unmet commitments and perceived double standards. They object to the inequalities which prevent many of them from participating in multilateral decision-making on an equal footing. As outlined in the Pact for the Future, we must use this moment of crisis to rectify the structural inequalities built into the international system. We can make this system more just and more representative of our common humanity. Implementing the commitments made in the Pact for the Future on global governance reform is critical to rebuilding trust in multilateralism. Excellencies, these geopolitical dynamics are profoundly impacting peace and security. Arms control frameworks and crisis management protocols, which helped stabilize great power rivalries for decades, have deteriorated. The risk of dangerous standoffs, miscalculations, and escalation is at a level not seen since the height of the Cold War. Conflicts are more complex and more deadly. They are also more enmeshed in global and regional dynamics, which makes them harder to resolve. Meanwhile, member states are espousing perilously different perspectives on where the threats to peace come from and how they are best addressed. At the same time, we must tackle a series of interlocking threats, from the climate emergency to the potential weaponization of new technologies, shrinking civil space, and growing inequalities. We must urgently address the unsustainable debt burdens affecting developing countries and the financing gap to reach the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. Achieving global peace and prosperity requires that member states find new ways to act collectively and cooperatively. This means prioritizing diplomatic engagement with each other, especially when disagreeing. This is what underpins the Secretary General's vision for multilateralism, a pragmatic reckoning that no state, not even the most powerful, can respond without help from others. International cooperation can and must function as win-win processes, which bring benefits to all involved. Excellencies, today the stakes for diplomacy are high, even existential. In a fractured world with competing narratives, it is incumbent upon all states to preserve at least one institution in which they all can trust and which can serve as a forum for them to come together. Excellencies, it is particularly in times of challenge when we must return to fundamental principles, when we must return to the framework that has kept us together, the United Nations Charter. The Charter is an instrument of international law to which member states are bound. Through the Charter, they have committed themselves to the values of multilateralism. The Charter's purpose and principles remain the foundation of international relations. When these have been flouted, put aside, or applied selectively, the results have been catastrophic. The Charter has proven its value. Over 80 years, we have not seen a global conflagration of the kind that led to the establishment of the United Nations. Nuclear weapons have not been used. Nations decolonized and became independent states. We must build on this foundation and commit to doing better in upholding the Charter's values and fulfilling its promise to succeeding generations. The Pact for the Future reinforced the cooperative frameworks necessary to bring us back to the path towards global peace, prosperity, and indivisible universal human rights for all. At its heart, the Pact for the Future is a pact for peace, peace in all its dimensions. Especially in this time of growing tensions and divides, the Pact recognized the importance of intensifying the use of diplomacy and dialogue, keeping channels open, diffusing tensions, and building trust across divides. The Pact reaffirms Member States' unwavering commitment to act in accordance with international law, as well as the importance of dialogue between states. It recognizes the role of the United Nations in preventive diplomacy and the peaceful settlement of disputes. The Secretariat works to support you in these crucial tasks. I thank you.
I thank Assistant Secretary General Genscher for his remarks. At this point, as per the program of this special event, we were scheduled to give the floor to the representative of France in his capacity as President of the Security Council for this month of April. However, despite the fact that an invitation had been dispatched over a month ago, and also in spite of the efforts made by members of that body, the delegation of France failed to confirm its participation in this special event and to even initiate an internal process within the Security Council for agreeing on a joint message for this important occasion, which is, needless to say, very much telling of the alleged commitment of the current President of the Security Council with multilateralism, diplomacy, and peace. As such, today, unfortunately, the Security Council is the sole organ of the New York-based main bodies of the United Nations not represented in this special event, which is held in the midst of important challenges, including in the field of international peace and security, which requires a rather reaffirmed commitment from that body with multilateralism and diplomacy in the interest of peace. Having said that, let us continue with our program, and now I invite Ambassador Anatolio Ndong Mba, Permanent Representative of the Republic of Equatorial Guinea, to the United Nations to take the floor in his capacity as Vice President of the Economic and Social Council of the United Nations. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. Excellencies, dear colleagues, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I am honored to be with you today to commemorate the International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace, a day that underscores the indispensable role of multilateralism in maintaining international peace and fostering friendly relations among nations. The relevance of multilateralism cannot be overstated in an era where pressing global challenges, poverty, inequalities, climate change, and conflicts transcend borders. Responding effectively to these challenges requires a collective response rooted in global solidarity and cooperation. Multilateralism is the cornerstone of our efforts to build a peaceful and prosperous world. It is through multilateral frameworks that we have been able to address complex global issues, promote human rights, and ensure sustainable development. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development is a testament to the potential of multilateralism. The 2030 Agenda emphasizes the intrinsic linkage between peace and development, recognizing that there can be no development without peace and no peace without development. When peace prevails, development has better chance to flourish, creating a virtuous cycle that benefits all. The Economic and Social Council plays a pivotal role in advancing the three dimensions of sustainable development and contributing to sustaining peace. ECOSOC's mandate encompasses a wide range of issues, from economic growth and social inclusion to environmental protection and humanitarian assistance. By addressing these interconnected issues, ECOSOC helps to create the conditions necessary for lasting peace and development. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, historically, ECOSOC has been instrumental in supporting development in conflict-affected countries. Through the work of its ad hoc advisory group on Haiti, ECOSOC has provided critical support to Haiti's recovery and development efforts. Similarly, ECOSOC's considerations of the situation in Sahel and South Sudan has highlighted the importance of addressing the root causes of conflict and promoting sustainable development. These efforts demonstrate ECOSOC's commitment to fostering peace and stability in some of the world's most challenging environments. In addition to its work in specific countries and regions, ECOSOC has been holding joint meetings with the Peace-Building Commission to advance the interlinkages between peace and development. These meetings provide a platform for dialogue and collaboration, enabling member states and other stakeholders to share experiences, identify best practices, and coordinate the effort to promote peace and development. By bringing together diverse perspectives and expertise, these joint meetings help to ensure that our collective efforts are more effective and impactful. The political declaration of the 2023 Sustainable Development Goals Summit and the Pact for the Future from the 2024 Summits of the Future provide a recent blueprint for reinvigorating multilateralism and accelerating progress toward the SDGs. By fostering greater cooperation and solidarity among nations, the Pact for the Future can help to create a more peaceful, just, and sustainable world. At the 80th session of the General Assembly, member states will carry out a review of ECOSOC and the high-level political forum. The review presents an opportunity for member states to consider how the Council and the high political forum can guide, catalyze, and reinforce our collective efforts to achieve the 2030 Agenda and the SDGs. Additionally, the review can also consider how to bring to the forefront the work of the Council segment and forums, functional commissions, and expert bodies and committees. As we celebrate the International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace, let us reaffirm our commitment to multilateralism and the principles of the United Nations Charter. Let us recognize that our collective efforts are essential to addressing the complex and interconnected challenges of our time. And let us work together to build a world where peace and development go hand in hand, benefiting all people and leaving no one behind. Mr. President, multilateralism remains our best hope for achieving a peaceful and prosperous future. By working together through multilateral framework, we can overcome the challenges we face and create a better world for future generations. Let us continue to uphold the values of multilateralism and diplomacy. Let us strive to build a world where peace and development are not just aspiration, but a life reality for all. I thank you very much.
I thank Ambassador Ndong Mba for his remarks. And now I would like to direct your attention to the screen. We will display a message from His Excellency Mr. Miguel Ángel Moratinos, the High Representative of the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations, who is currently abroad and was unable to join us in person.
Excellencies, distinguished participants, I wish to thank the group of friends in defense of the Charter of the United Nations for the effort and strong commitment to promoting multilateralism and diplomacy for peace, and for convening this timely event. My apologies that I'm not able to join you in person due to traveling on official mission. My dear friends, the observance of the International Day on Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace reflect the unwavering determination of member states which supported the General Assembly Resolution 73-127 to stand by the foundational values of the United Nations. The spirit of the Charter inspired the tireless work of the diplomatic community and the United Nations staff to rebuild the fragile post-World War II order and help prevent World War III. Since 1945, we had witnessed economic growth, unimaginable technological advancement, and progress in the promotion of human rights and sustainable development across the globe. But paradoxically, in 2025, when the United Nations organization will celebrate its 80th anniversary, we are witnessing a moment of transition in international governance. We are observing a growing trend of withdrawal from international legal frameworks and multilateral institutions. We are yet to achieve a lasting, sustained peace. Much more has to be done to protect the human rights of the most vulnerable and to lift up from poverty millions of people who direly need the resources and support of the international community. Excellencies, my dear friends, during the founding time of the United Nations, the first chair of the UN Commission on Human Rights, First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt, said, and I quote, "It is not enough to talk about peace. One must believe in it. And it's not enough to believe in it. One must work at it." End of the quotation. Those powerful and inspirational words reverberate across decades. They remind us that it's more important than ever to turn to the origin of the United Nations and its charter. It is also the spirit of multilateralism and working of peace that the United Nations Alliance of Civilization was established 20 years ago. Building on the principle of diplomacy for peace, UNOSC promotes understanding and cooperation among nations and people across culture and reduce polarization at the local and global levels. In my capacity as High Representative of the United Nations Alliance of Civilization, I call on the international community to double down on our resolve to exercise dialogue and to unite, not isolate, to promote a culture of peace and to denounce a culture of war. I thank you.
Thank you very much to the High Representative for the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations for his remarks. And now I would like to give the floor to His Excellency Godfrey Kwoba, Deputy Permanent Representative of the Republic of Uganda to the United Nations in his capacity as Chair of the Non-Aligned Movement.
I have the honor to speak on behalf of the 121 member states of the Non-Aligned Movement, NAM. The Non-Aligned Movement welcomes the adoption of General Assembly Resolution 73/127, entitled International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace, which was promoted by the Non-Aligned Movement in line with the provisions of the political declaration adopted on 26 September 2018 on the need to uphold the UN Charter and the NAM purposes and principles, towards a culture of peace and the recognition of the role of the movement in the promotion and preservation of multilateralism and the role of diplomacy in international relations. The establishment of 24th April as the International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace has special significance as it coincides with the conclusion of the Afro-Asian Conference of 1955 that resulted in the promulgation of the Bandung Principles and laid the grounds for the establishment of the movement. NAM underscores that this International Day constitutes a means to promote the values of the United Nations and to reaffirm the faith of our peoples in the purposes and principles enshrined in its charter, to reaffirm the importance and relevance of multilateralism and international law, and to advance the common goals of sustaining peace through diplomacy and not warfare. The non-aligned movement reaffirms and underscores the validity and relevance of the movement's principled positions concerning the promotion and preservation of multilateralism and multilateral process, especially at the current juncture when multilateralism is under attack and rise in uncertainty. The United Nations, its charter and international law remain indispensable tools which are central in the preservation and maintenance of international peace and security, and the strengthening of international cooperation. The expansion of the UN membership from the original 51 member states in 1945 to the current 193 member states is clear testimony of the role of collective responsibility in global solutions. While acknowledging its limitations, we cannot deny that the UN enjoys a solidly founded international legitimacy and remains the central global multilateral forum for addressing the pressing challenges and needs that transcend national boundaries beyond any one country acting alone. In this regard, the world must reject all forms of unilateralism and fully embrace the original ideals of multilateralism enunciated in the preamble of the UN. The NAM also welcomed the adoption of General Assembly Resolution 73/286, through which the International Delegates Day was established with the purpose of highlighting the role of delegates of the member states of the United Nations in fulfilling the main goals of the organization, and in particular, in maintaining international peace and security, and in employing international machinery for the promotion of the economic and social advancement of all peoples, and in promoting and encouraging respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms as envisaged in the Charter of the United Nations, as well as in promoting inclusive multilateralism to effectively address global challenges. NAM reiterates the need to strengthen the United Nations as the primary multilateral organization, providing it with substantive capacity to fully and effectively meet the purposes and principles enshrined in its charter. We call on the consolidation of the democratic and intergovernmental character of the UN, in particular through the revitalization of the General Assembly and strengthening its authority as the democratic, inclusive, equitable, and representative body of the organization, as well as expediting reform of the United Nations Security Council in accordance with General Assembly Resolution 62/557 in a comprehensive and integrated manner in order to make the Security Council a more democratic, transparent, and representative organ of the United Nations. In conclusion, the non-aligned movement calls on all member states of the United Nations to continue to observe the International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace, and to continue to disseminate the advantages of multilateralism and the role of diplomacy in international cooperation for peace, security, stability, and inclusive sustainable development for all nations. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Cuova, for your remarks. And I propose that we move on the following item in our program, And I will now open the floor to participant delegations interested in delivering remarks. I recognize the representative of Cuba, His Excellency Mr. Ernesto Soberon, and you have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, dear Samuel, Excellencies, dear colleagues, all protocols observed. We endorse the statement made by Uganda on behalf of the non-aligned movement and by Venezuela on behalf of the group of friends in defense of the Charter of the United Nations. We welcome the initiative to organize this event, which places the value of multilateralism, diplomacy, and peace at the center of attention on the eve of the commemoration of the 8th anniversary of the United Nations. The establishment of April 24 as the International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace, promoted by the Sister Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela in General Assembly, is highly symbolic. The day coincides with the conclusion of the Afro-Asian Conference of 1955, the origin of Bandung Principles, on which the non-aligned movement, grouping most of the members of the United Nations in defense of the multilateralism, was founded. The celebration of this International Day invites us to reflect on the achievement and challenge of our organization, on the dangers hanging over multilateralism, on the profound reform demanded by the current international order, and on the next steps humanity will take to save itself from the selfishness, aggression, and coercion of few to detriment of those most in need who struggle every day for their development. In taking such a balance, we cannot ignore the ongoing genocide against the Palestinian people and the injustice that for more than 75 years has marked the life of a generation of Palestinians. Israel's illegal occupations, forced displacement, colonization, and apartheid practices have continuously and flagrantly violated the inalienable right of the Palestinian people. Dear colleagues, we are witnessing a crucial moment as the United States attempts to forge the design of an international system that treats peace, stability, and security. Through the supposed defense of an extreme nationalism, an imperialist and racist exceptionalism, the US government resorts to use the brutality, punitive economic and commercial tools whose pernicious effect will have negative repercussions on our peoples. In the face of escalating tension and renewed forms of domination and hegemony, growing threats to international peace and security, and the new US government offensive against the UN and the other multilateral institutions, let us respond by strengthening unity, globalizing solidarity, and fostering integration, cooperation, and dialogue. Today, as never before, a renewed commitment to multilateralism is needed. Diplomacy and mutual respect in international relations must take precedence over coercion. The promotion of a culture of peace and full respect for the United Nations Charter and international law are urgently needed if we are to ensure peaceful coexistence among nations and thus the very survival of humanity. The appreciation of unilateral coercive measures, the application of unilateral coercive measures, and the drawing up of spurious and arbitrary lists, such as that of states that allegedly sponsor terrorism, which are contrary to international law, must cease immediately. The multilateral system must be renewed to respond to the urgent demand for a more just, democratic, equitable, and respectful of the sovereign equality of states for the benefit of present and future generations. I reaffirm Cuba's commitment to the proclamation of Latin America and the Caribbean as zone of peace, which is to reaffirm our profound vocation for peace and our unwavering commitment to respect for national sovereignty and the self-determination of peoples. Cuba will continue to be committed to the unavailable value of multilateralism, the Charter of the United Nations, and international law. I conclude by quoting the historic leader of the Cuban Revolution, Fidel Castro Ruz, who tirelessly advocated the values implied by this International Day, and I quote, "The battle for peace means fighting to save humanity from apocalyptic destruction. It means fighting to save hundreds of millions of lives of men, women, young people, the elderly, and children." I end the quote. Thank you very much.
I thank the Ambassador Soberon for his remarks, and now I recognize His Excellency Mrs. Sofia Tesfamarian, Ambassador of Iran.
I thank you, Mr. Chair. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, on this significant occasion of the International Day for Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace, the State of Eritrea reaffirms its unwavering commitment to the principles of multilateralism, diplomacy, and international cooperation as enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations. Eritrea, a young and resilient nation that achieved its independence in 1991 after a protracted and valiant struggle, deeply understands the value of sovereignty, justice, and solidarity. Experience has taught us that global peace and sustainable development cannot be achieved without genuine dialogue, mutual respect, and collective action. These principles, so vital to our liberation and nation-building endeavors, are also the bedrock of multilateralism. Yet today, multilateralism is under serious threat. The growing tendency to bypass or undermine the multilateral system through unilateralism, politicization, coercive practices, and sanctions has eroded trust among nations. These actions not only diminish the relevance of the multilateral diplomacy, but also encroach upon the sovereign rights of states, particularly those developing countries in the global south. Eritrea condemns the imposition of illicit and arbitrary unilateral coercive measures which contravene the spirit and letter of the United Nations Charter. Such measures, often imposed without due process or legitimacy, inflict collective punishment on populations, hinder socioeconomic development, and obstruct the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. They are a grave affront to multilateralism, international law, and the dignity of nations. We're witnessing a troubling pattern where mechanisms meant to protect human rights and promote peace are increasingly weaponized to pursue narrow political objectives. These actions create mistrust, deepen polarization, and undermine the credibility of the multilateral system itself. For us, multilateralism cannot be genuine if it's selective, coercive, or used as a tool of domination. Mr. Chair, despite these challenges, Eritrea remains a firm believer in principled multilateralism, one that is inclusive, representative, and rooted in mutual respect and sovereign equality of all nations. Its active participation in the multilateral platforms is a testament to its constructive engagement and its commitment to promoting the well-being of communities globally. Eritrea, along with countries in the region and partners, continues to endeavor for regional peace, cooperation, and integration in the Horn of Africa and the Red Sea Basin. It's constructively engaged in fostering peace and stability in Sudan, South Sudan, and Somalia, nations that continue to face complex challenges. Our efforts are grounded on the belief that regional solutions anchored in mutual respect and national ownership are essential for achieving lasting peace and stability. Such approach prioritizes genuine dialogue, non-interference, and solidarity among neighboring states, recognizing that sustainable peace must be driven by the people and leadership of the region themselves. Mr. Chair, however, we must be frank. The international multilateral system remains deeply unequal. Africa continues to bear the brunt of global injustices, including from economic marginalization to environmental vulnerability. We join other African nations in calling for comprehensive reforms, particularly the UN Security Council and the international financial architecture, to correct the historical injustices and imbalances that thereby ensure that Africa and the global South at large is fully represented and respected. Multilateralism must evolve to reflect today's multipolar realities. It must center the voices of developing nations and prioritize their aspirations. We cannot speak of diplomacy and peace while tolerating double standards, selective accountability, and the continued marginalization of Africa and other regions. Mr. Chair, as we commemorate this important day, Eritrea calls on the international community to recommit to the fundamental principles of the UN Charter: sovereign equality, non-interference, peaceful coexistence, and collective responsibility. We must resist the slide into unilateralism and redouble efforts to uphold a just and equitable international order grounded on international law. While global challenges from climate change and food insecurity to displacement and armed conflicts continue to grow in complexity, the solution lies not in the erosion of multilateralism, but in its revitalization. Listening to diverse voices, engaging in respectful dialogue, and above all, holding the principles enshrined in the UN Charter must be the cornerstone of our shared path forward. Eritrea remains ready to work constructively with all partners to build a more peaceful, just, and sustainable world. We believe that multilateral diplomacy rooted in shared principles and inclusivity, not pressure and bullying, is the only way to secure a better future for current and future generations. I thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Sofia from Eritrea, for her remarks. And now I recognize the Ambassador Jaime Hermida from Nicaragua. You have the floor, sir.
Muchas gracias, compañero embajador. We join the statement made by Uganda on behalf of the non-aligned movement. We want to recognize and express our gratitude to Venezuela and to our group for organizing this important commemoration. We also want to fraternally greet the peoples and governments represented here on this significant commemoration of the International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace. Today, we raise our voice with the same firmness that has characterized us in all multilateral fora. True multilateralism must be a genuine statement for peace, justice, and respect among people, rejecting domination, secessionist, and hegemonic policies. Nicaragua reiterates its unwavering defense of the fundamental principle of the Charter of the UN, the sovereign equality of state, the no interference in internal affairs. Very important is the peaceful settlement of dispute and the right of people to self-determination. These principles are the basis of the international order that we are all obliged to preserve and to strengthen. We categorically condemn the imposition of unilateral coercive measures and illegal, arbitrary violation of international law. These measures are acts of aggression against multilateralism itself, a means of economic coercion that constitute a modern form of war against the people of the Global South, undermining the sovereignty of state, violating human rights, hindering the integral development of our nation. The world now faces common challenges that do not recognize borders. Climate change, pandemic, poverty, hunger, the armed race, the persisting colonialism and structural racism, the genocide of the Palestinian people, and the denial of their inalienable right for self-determination and freedom. All these problems can be solved once the politic of confrontation, unilateralism, and imposition are brought to an end. Nicaragua advocates a multilateralism of solidarity, peaceful, multipolar, and profoundly humane system that responds to the real needs of our people and not to the agendas of imperial domination. Peace is a concrete commitment that demands coherence, mutual respect, and a willingness to the peaceful settlement of dispute. Diplomacy must prevail over threat and coercion. International law must prevail over the law of the strongest. We have to defend authentic multilateralism at the service of the people, and we will continue for and to consolidate this multipolar world with sovereignty, self-determination, and the peace that we all want. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Jaime, for your remarks. And now I recognize His Excellency Mr. Taonga Bushabayanhu, Ambassador, Permanent Representative of Zimbabwe. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Zimbabwe is honored to participate in this important commemoration as we also approach the 80th anniversary of the United Nations. We commend the coordinator of our group of friends in defense of the Charter of the United Nations for convening this timely event. We also associate ourselves with the statement delivered by Uganda on behalf of the Non-Aligned Movement. The theme of today's gathering, the transformative power of unity, advancing multilateralism and diplomacy for a better future, for peace and development, resonates deeply with Zimbabwe's enduring commitment to peaceful coexistence, multilateralism, and diplomacy. In a world grappling with interlinked crises ranging from conflict and inequality to climate change and global economic uncertainty, only unity and international cooperation, not unilateralism or division, will help us resolve this web of crises and deliver a sustainable peace and development. This vision is firmly rooted in the origins of the United Nations itself. Born out of the ashes of war to prevent future global conflict, the UN continues to embody the founding principles of sovereign equality of states, the peaceful settlement of disputes, respect for territorial integrity, and the centrality of dialogue. As the only universal platform where nations, regardless of size or power, can voice their concerns and resolve differences, the UN remains the linchpin of multilateralism. We must therefore safeguard and strengthen this institution against unilateral action and selective engagement. Zimbabwe's own foreign policy is firmly anchored in the peaceful settlement of disputes, the sovereign equality of states, and our principle of being a friend to all and an enemy to none. We regard diplomacy as the first and most effective line of defense against conflict and misunderstanding. Our commitment to multilateralism is unwavering. This commitment is reflected in our support for global economic governance grounded in fairness and inclusivity. In this context, we reaffirm the vital role of the World Trade Organization as the cornerstone of a fair and rules-based global trading system. The WTO provides a framework that enables equitable participation for all nations. Unfortunately, this framework is increasingly undermined by unilateral tariffs and coercive trade measures that fragment supply chains and exacerbate global economic insecurity, particularly for the most vulnerable. As history has demonstrated, trade wars tend to foster instability rather than deliver lasting or constructive solutions. Chair, as we mark the oncoming International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace, we are reminded that the peoples of the world continue to look to this institution, the United Nations, to deliver solutions grounded in equity, dialogue, and shared responsibility. Multilateralism does not demand unanimity, but it does require steadfast dedication to peace, human dignity, and sustainable development. We must reject approaches that breed division and reaffirm our collective resolve to advance diplomacy, dialogue, and cooperation. In conclusion, the world stands at crossroads. What is needed is a reset towards genuine multilateralism, towards principled dialogue, and toward a renewed commitment to working together. Let us harness the transformative power of unity to build a more peaceful, prosperous, and equitable future. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much to the Ambassador of Zimbabwe for his remarks. And now I recognize His Excellency Mr. Pavel Evsenko, Deputy Permanent Representative of the Republic of Belarus. You have the floor.
Excellencies, dear colleagues and friends, we thank Venezuela for convening this meeting and for its tireless contribution to the preparation of joint activities and initiatives of the group aimed at defending principles and purposes of the United Nations Charter, the sovereignty and independence of member states, the principles of multilateralism, cooperation, and sovereign equality, which are fundamental to the maintenance of international relations. And special thanks go to all today's panelists. I would also like to express my gratitude to the Russian side for the brilliantly conducted third meeting of national coordinators of the Group of Friends. The participants of the meeting in Moscow were able to confirm the fundamental goals of the group's member states, as well as their focus on further close cooperation. On the eve of the 80th anniversary of the United Nations, we are convinced that the United Nations play a key role in ensuring international peace and security through conflict prevention, peacekeeping missions, and the promotion of dialogue between states. Multilateral diplomacy, the core of the United Nations, enables countries to jointly address global issues, build trust, and find compromises. Together, they promote stability, development, and respect for international law. In this context, we warmly welcome the special event held to celebrate and promote the International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace. Today, we are here to celebrate the power that can change the world for the better, the power of unity and diversity. In a world full of different cultures, languages, histories, and interests, it is multilateralism and diplomacy that bridge the gap between peoples. They allow us not only to overcome differences, but also to turn differences into a source of enrichment and shared growth. Multilateralism, especially through organizations like the UN, creates a platform for collective action and the fair participation of all countries, large and small. This is especially important today when humanity faces common challenges, climate change, poverty, conflict, pandemics, and etc. Unity in diversity is not just a slogan. It is a recognition that sustainable development, peace, and justice are possible only when every voice is heard and all countries act together with respect and trust in each other. Let diplomacy and multilateralism be an integral part of our journey towards a world where no one is left behind. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much to the Ambassador of Belarus for his remarks. And now I recognize Ambassador Geng Shuang, Deputy Permanent Representative of the People's Republic of China. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Colleagues, China commends Venezuela for hosting this special event on behalf of the Group of Friends for the second year to commemorate the International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace. I also thank the previous speakers for their remarks. Chair, as we mark the 80th anniversary of the UN, we are facing a world in growing turmoil and transformation, where multilateralism is under strain, justice and fairness are being undermined, and instability and uncertainty continue to rise. Today, what we need more than ever are multilateralism and diplomacy, and global peace and security. I have 3 points. First, the authority of the UN Charter must be firmly upheld. The Charter underpins the post-war international order and the basic norms of international relations. Yet, certain countries have disregarded its authority, pursued hegemony and bullying practices, and used the UN only when it fits its own benefits. Against this backdrop, the international community must reaffirm its commitment to a UN-centered international system and resolutely oppose any actions that contravene or undermine the Charter. Second, multilateralism must be reinvigorated. In recent years, we have seen that certain country has put its own interest first by practicing double standards, breaking agreements, withdrawing from international organizations, and imposing unilateral measures. These have led to a severe blow to the UN and the multilateral systems, and a serious threat to global peace and development. Recently, the United States has imposed tariffs on all of its trading partners, which severely infringes upon the legitimate rights and interests of all countries, severely violates WTO rules, severely threatens global economic stability, and severely undermines the multilateral order. The international community must see clearly the unilateral, protectionist, and coercive nature of US actions. We must stand united to defend every country's right to development and restore confidence in multilateralism by speaking out firmly against the US placing its own interest above others. Third, global governance must be reformed and improved. All countries should engage in global governance in the spirit of extensive consultation, joint contribution, and shared benefit, and ensure that international affairs are not dominated by a few. Development gains are not monopolized by a few, and the legitimate rights and interests of the global south are not violated by a few. The international community needs to enable multilateral institutions, including the Security Council, to fulfill their responsibilities effectively and ensure tangible progress in reforming the global governance system. Colleagues, in February this year, during China's presidency of the Security Council, we convened a high-level open debate on practicing multilateralism, reforming and improving global governance, which sent out a strong, unified message in support of multilateralism. Going forward, as a supporter, advocate, and practitioner of multilateralism, China will continue to work with all countries to firmly promote the UN's central role in international affairs, advance an equal and orderly multipolar world, and a universally beneficiary and inclusive economic globalization, and build a community with a shared future for mankind. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much to the Ambassador of China for his remarks. And now I recognize Her Excellency Mrs. Sara Ershadi, Ambassador, Deputy Permanent Representative of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Mr. Chair, Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, please allow me to express my gratitude to the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela for its dedication in leading the group of friends in defense of the Charter of the United Nations and organizing this timely meeting. The International Day for Multilateralism is a call to action, an opportunity to reflect on past achievements, address current challenges, and strengthen our collective pursuit of peace and justice, especially as we approach the UN's 80th anniversary. Multilateralism and diplomacy essentially constitute the very foundation elements and objective of the United Nations. Eventually, the United Nations is by itself an exemplar result of multilateralism and diplomacy. It is quite opportune that this meeting is held on the occasion of the International Day in the United Nations and by a group dedicated to defending the Charter. This fact attests to our collective commitment to uphold multilateralism and diplomacy, and Iran, which is a member of the group, like always reaffirms its steadfast commitment to multilateralism and diplomacy as enshrined in the UN Charter. Currently, the world is persistently experiencing scourges of violence, fragmentation, and destruction emanating primarily from war, conflicts, and unilateralism of few who seek to advance self-serving policies to the detriment of the international community. In this context, it would be remiss if we do not address the catastrophic situation in Palestine, where the Israeli occupying regime is killing thousands of innocent people, including women and children, leaving more injured and displacing millions while deliberately inflicting severe conditions of life upon the Palestinian people. The regime remains intransigent to the persistent calls of the international community and actively demonstrates total disregard to the Charter of the United Nations. Let us not forget that such lawlessness of the Israeli regime, its abhorrent crimes and occupation are not only attacks against innocent civilians, but should also be deemed to attacks against the purposes and principles of the UN Charter, as well as the threat to the very institution of peace. Regrettably, the Security Council, paralyzed in times of crisis, has raised concerns about its effectiveness. It is high time that justice be served and therefore to stop the genocide committed by the Israeli regime. To that end, multilateralism and effective measures on the part of the international community should be urgently employed to hold the regime, which is a threat to the international peace and security, fully accountable for all its egregious crimes. Distinguished colleagues, unilateral coercive measures, which are flagrant violation of international law, are also, among us, other formidable challenges that also negatively impact the whole population of affected countries and impede the realization of and violate human rights, including the right to life, the right to health, and the right to development. It goes without saying that unilateral coercive measures also amount to crimes against humanity, including by inflicting egregious conditions of life upon the population. UCMs which seek to infringe upon the sovereign and inalienable right of states to choose their economic system without coercion or threat in any form are intrinsically designated, promulgated, and imposed to undermine multilateralism and cooperation, thereby also violating duties in relation to cooperation among states. The United Nations, which has been recognized as the most representative international organization and the utmost expression of multilateralism, is intervened with the two cherished concepts, diplomacy and multilateralism. We are of the conviction that in such a time of eroding trust, diplomacy must remain a primary tool aligned with genuine multilateralism within the United Nations, which, when employed in good faith, could resolve the common global challenges of the world, such as achievement of sustainable development, challenges arising from climate change, divide between developing and developed countries, including digital divide, poverty, and terrorism. To realize these noble goals, global governance institutions must be revitalized to reflect current geopolitical realities and be more inclusive, especially to the benefit of the global South. As the UN approaches its 80th anniversary, it is a moment to strengthen multilateral institutions and reinforce cooperation. I thank you.
Thank you very much to the Ambassador of Iran. And now I give the floor to Ambassador Anna Evstigneva, Deputy Permanent Representative of the Russian Federation.
Dear colleagues, we thank our dear friends from the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela for their valuable initiative to host this special event. We align fully ourselves with the statement made on behalf of the Group of Friends in Defense of the UN Charter. 6 years ago, the General Assembly adopted the resolution on the establishment of the International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace. At the time before consideration of this document, we all cherished a hope that member states could set aside growing tensions and show unanimous support to the overarching principle enshrined by the UN Charter that global challenges should be addressed through multilateralism and diplomacy. Despite the overwhelming majority of votes in favor of the resolution, there were still few who decided to reject it. The tragedy in Gaza, which amounts to the biggest atrocity of our time, is growing in scale as we speak. It shows that the UN-centered international world order faces a profound crisis incited by unilateralism, neocolonialism, and violations of the principles of the UN Charter. Among other examples is reckless expansion of NATO-centered alliance in Europe and Asia that brings nothing to the respective regions but conflict and instability. Several years ago, the Western countries introduced their commitment to this so-called rules-based world order, but ever since we haven't heard a clear explanation or description of such rules. Over the years, the international community has witnessed operationalization of this controversial concept. Closed coalitions, hidden decision-making, collective punishment of political opponents, and unilateral coercive measures have become regular methods of the Western diplomacy in action. Financial and economic hegemony of the West steals the benefits of globalization. Its belligerence and military recklessness leave no room for diplomacy and peaceful resolution of conflicts. The motives to pursue aggressive international policies are clear: to preserve their dominant neocolonial position in the world and slow down the emergence of a multipolar world. Let us not fall victims of dubious unilateral concept and recommit, as 7 years ago, the principles of the UN Charter and international law in all their entirety and interconnectedness. In accordance with its provisions, all member states are equal and have the right to choose their own political and development models. Alongside with other responsible members of the Group of Friends in Defense of the UN Charter, Russia actively supports and participates in regional and multilateral organizations and associations that respect the goals and principles of the Charter, such as BRICS, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and the Eurasian Economic Union. We appreciate strong multilateral platforms, such as the Group of Friends in Defense of the UN Charter and Non-Aligned Movement. These platforms are instrumental in fostering cooperation based on sovereign equality, mutual respect, and consensus among their members. As the resolution on the International Day of Multilateralism stipulates, the United Nations remains the most representative international organization and the utmost expression of multilateralism. Our common responsibility is to preserve the central role of the UN in the world politics and to adapt it to the changing reality. The key to success is joint work, rejection of claims of exclusivity, and respect for the sovereign equality of states. This is what we all signed up to when we ratified the UN Charter. Ahead of its 80th anniversary, we want to see organization truly representing the interests of all its member states. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you to the Ambassador of the Russian Federation for her remarks. And now I recognize the representative of the plurinational state of Bolivia.
Distinguished Chair, Excellencies, at the outset, the plurinational state of Bolivia extends its sincere appreciation to the chair of this group for convening this needed space of reflection on such a needed topic. In this regard, my delegation aligns with the statement delivered by the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela on behalf of our group. Today, we gather in occasion of the International Day for Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace. And we do under the urgent recognition that our shared future depends on a simple yet profound truth. Unity is our greatest catalyst for progress. Indeed, and more than ever, multilateralism and peace stand as two inseparable pillars for the construction of a just, equitable, and truly sustainable world. Multilateralism is not a mere instrument of diplomacy. it is very condition for lasting peace. And peace, in turn, is the sacred ground upon which all life depends. The world is awash with images of pain, devastation, and unspeakable suffering, pain that springs from the destructive forces of a culture of death. We see it starkly in the catastrophic humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Across the planet, humanity is being stripped of its right to live in dignity, in balance, in freedom, and in unity. Instead, we are driven into division, into endless war, into the destruction of the life itself. We must not allow this dystopian vision to prevail. Let us remember the dream of the founders of the United Nations, born from the ashes of war, with the hope that never again will humanity descend into such darkness. That dream is still alive. We must build the future with the wisdom of the past. We call for a multilateralism that is effective, inclusive, sovereign, consensual, and above all, dedicated to the sacred task of peace. In Bolivia, we fight to build a world rooted on a culture of peace and culture of life. The culture of life implies a world at peace and freedom from violence from all. We are all human beings, and all living beings that must coexist on Mother Earth. The culture of life implies just transitions for all, based on the fulfillment of historical responsibilities within the framework of international solidarity and cooperation. The culture of life implies equal rights for all, condemning the current scenario where some countries unilaterally grant themselves rights that violate the rights of other nations and peoples. The culture of life implies building a pluralistic and inclusive world for all, a world where the vision of the peoples of the global South can emerge and flourish. The culture of life implies strengthening democracies and consensus, assimilating the inclusion of diverse voices in decision-making process, particularly those of the most excluded. The culture of life means strengthening communities of life where all people recognize themselves as part of a single community united by a common future based on respect for and for the protection of peace. Now is the time to defend multilateralism and the culture of peace. Now is to uphold the principles we enshrine together in the Charter of the United Nations. Let us not betray that promise. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much to the representative of the plurinational state of Bolivia. And now I give the floor to Her Excellency Tania Serafini von Romualdo, permanent representative of the Republic of Cabo Verde.
Thank you, Chair. Excellencies, colleagues, all protocol observed. On this special event to celebrate the International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace, I am honored to join you in reaffirming Cabo Verde's strong commitment to the Charter of the United Nations, which continues to serve as the bedrock of international peace, security, development, and human rights. At these troubling times, where the international community finds itself confronted with growing geopolitical tensions, erosion of trust, and unilateral approaches to global challenges, the principles enshrined in the UN Charter remain more precious than ever. They are so much more than words, for they truly represent a collective promise to uphold sovereign equality and non-interference, to resolve disputes peacefully, to respect international law, and to promote the dignity and rights of all peoples. The group of friends in defense of the UN Charter stands as a proof to our conviction that multilateralism is both relevant and indispensable. In the face of complex transnational threats, from conflict and climate change to pandemics and growing inequality, no country can act alone. The challenges we face are global, and only through dialogue, cooperation, engagement in good faith, mutual respect, and respect for international law can we face them and build a more just, secure, peaceful, cooperative, and sustainable world where no regions, countries, communities, or individuals are left behind. Today, let us recommit to the Charter's vision and spirit. Let us defend it with words and deeds. Together, our nations can strengthen inclusive diplomacy, resist selective interpretations of international law, and ensure that multilateral institutions continue to reflect the voices and aspirations of all nations, especially those too often marginalized. Peace is not a destination, it's a process, and multilateralism is the path towards its achievements. Excellencies, before concluding, allow me to express Cabo Verde's deepest condolences for the passing of His Holiness, Pope Francis, a man of dialogue, a true multilateralist, and a messenger for peace. Thank you.
I thank the Ambassador of Cabo Verde for her remarks. And now I recognize the Deputy Permanent Representative of the Kingdom of Morocco.
Thank you very much, Excellencies. It is an honor to take the floor on this International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace under the theme, The Transformative Power of Unity, Advancing Multilateralism and Diplomacy for a Better Future of Peace and Development for All. In today's fragmented world, marked by conflicts, climate crisis, economic challenges, and humanitarian emergencies, unity is not a luxury, it is an urgent imperative. Now more than ever, we must reaffirm our commitment to the UN Charter and to a multilateralism rooted in trust, solidarity, and shared responsibility. Unity is not just standing side by side. Unity is acting hand in hand, working together. It requires courage, humility, active listening, and bridge building. The Kingdom of Morocco fully embraces this vision, whether in our efforts to consolidate peace, advance sustainable development, or promote intercultural and interreligious dialogue. We deeply believe that today's global challenges require collective, coordinated, and inclusive responses. As underlined by His Majesty King Mohammed VI at the 2023 Parliamentary Conference on Interfaith Dialogue in Marrakesh, I quote, "Humanity is facing daunting challenges. It is grappling with a situation marked by security, economic, political, health, and environmental crises on one hand, and sincere efforts to use mechanisms, tools, and energies to address or contain these crises on the other hand." End of quote. This is precisely why Morocco supports a renewed and revitalized multilateralism, one that places unity, solidarity, and mutual respect at its core, one that remains anchored in diplomacy, dialogue, and international cooperation. The 80th anniversary of the UN is not only a celebration of this historical milestone of the creation of our organization, but also an opportunity to modernize and strengthen it with a robust, inclusive, and more effective multilateral system. A multilateral system that is better equipped to serve present and future generations. In this spirit, Morocco reaffirms the following priorities: a more equitable and inclusive global governance architecture that gives the Global South a greater voice, especially within international financial institutions and decision-making bodies. An urgent reform of the international financial system that supports the sustainable development for all, including the most vulnerable countries' economies. A comprehensive reform of the Security Council to ensure it reflects today's geopolitical realities and reinforces the trust in its capacity to uphold international peace and security. The central role of diplomacy and good faith engagement in resolving disputes, preventing conflicts, and promoting long-term stability. A firm commitment to international law and the principles of the UN Charter as the cornerstone of our collective action. Morocco continues to contribute actively to international peace and security through its participation in UN peacekeeping missions, its effective commitment in South-South cooperation, and its unwavering promotion of tolerance, mutual respect, and dialogue among civilizations. In our communities, in our institutions, and on the global stage, we are reminded daily that the challenges we face, such as climate change, inequality, or conflicts, are too complex to confront in isolation. But united, we can respond to these challenges. Together, we can have the power to transform them into opportunities for progress, resilience, and shared prosperity. Let us remember that what unites us is far greater than what divides us. Today is not only a commemoration, it is a call to action, a decisive moment to renew our commitment to multilateralism, to diplomacy, and to building a future of peace, justice, and development for all. Mr. Chair, I would like to seize this opportunity and say that in the spirit of this unity, that the Kingdom of Morocco express its deep sorrow at the passing of His Holiness, Pope Francis, a leader and global advocate for peace, dialogue, and solidarity. His legacy will remain a source of inspiration for those committed to a strong multilateralism and building a world rooted in compassion, justice, and coexistence. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much to the representative of the Kingdom of Morocco for her remarks. And now I recognize the Deputy Permanent Representative of the Republic of Senegal.
Thank you, Excellency, for convening this event, which offers the opportunity for both an introspective and prospective exercise in our practice of multilateralism and diplomacy. In this context of multiplying complex and intertwined crises and challenges. At the dawn of the 80th anniversary of the United Nations, it is worth saying that our multilateralism is giving way to a fragmented international community, while at the same time, the number of areas demanding global governance regulation continues to grow, widening the scope of multilateralism. In this connection, allow me to share 3 ideas. Firstly, we need to rebuild confidence among states to face the various crises. Since 2020, the world has dived into a period of geopolitical uncertainty. There is doubt about the legitimacy of our international organizations and about the universality of principles we must abide by. We need a renewed commitment to dialogue, cooperation, and diplomacy, which are the cardinal values of a cooperative multilateralism. Secondly, it urges to adopt multilateralism to better respond to today's challenges. Senegal pleads for a more human, inclusive, and representative multilateralism through continued reform and global political, economic, and financial governance, with a view to strengthening the presence of those forgotten or underrepresented by the current system. Also, we need an accountable multilateralism that keeps us to our commitments, including on financing for development, climate action, and on the rule of law at the international level. As a symbol of the call for more justice and accountability, the UN Security Council is to be urgently reformed and expanded in both categories at the benefit of underrepresented regions such as Africa. To that extent, the Pact for the Future and the Declaration for Future Generations offer a compass. Thirdly, we must strengthen the preventive diplomacy for a lasting peace and coherent development. To prevent an international conducive to dialogue and cooperation, we must reinforce UN prevention framework so that UN better embodies the international community and better assume its primary responsibility in the prevention and resolution of conflicts. In this regard, I would like to recall that a comprehensive prevention framework should encompass all stages of the cycle of violence and tackle the root causes. To conclude, let me say that this preventive approach relies also on our renewed capability to create interdependence where overlapping interests exist on shared resources or domains. This is how the fear of rivalry can be trumped by the assurance of partnership. This is the meaning of Senegal's commitment to hydrodiplomacy as a tool for peaceful, concerted, and inclusive management of transboundary basins. That's why I would like to invite the member state to seize the opportunity of the UN Water Conference 2026, co-hosted by Senegal and the UAE, to advance preventive approaches on the water-related issues. I thank you.
Thank you very much to the representative of Senegal for his remarks. And now I recognize Mr. Leoneto Espinola Ley de Araujo, Director General for Multilateral Affairs of Timor-Leste.
Thank you, Excellency, for giving me the floor and organizing this important event. We align ourselves with the statement delivered by the Republic of Uganda on behalf of the non-aligned movement. Excellencies, Timor-Leste's journey to sovereignty is emblematic of multilateralism's critical role in fostering sustainable peace and development. Lessons learned underscore that peace is not merely the absence of conflict, but the presence of robust, inclusive mechanisms that address the root causes of conflict and promote societal resilience. Since 2002, Timor-Leste has actively engaged with international institutions to rebuild and redefine its national identity. The support from the United Nations and various regional organizations has been instrumental in our nation-building efforts, providing peacekeeping forces and guidance in establishing governance structures, promoting human rights, and fostering economic development. This collective support highlights the indispensable nature of multilateral frameworks in enabling young nations to navigate the complexity of post-conflict recovery and lay the groundwork for long-term stability. Moreover, Timor-Leste recognizes diplomacy extends beyond conflict resolution. It is a proactive tool for addressing global challenges that transcend borders. From combating climate change to ensuring food security and promoting sustainable development, our nation is committed to participating in dialogues and initiatives that seek comprehensive solutions through cooperative international action. By embracing multilateralism, we acknowledge that our efforts are amplified when aligned with the global strategies, enabling us to contribute effectively to a more peaceful and equitable world. Our commitment to multilateralism is further demonstrated through our active involvement in regional and international forums, such as the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, the G7+, and the Community of the Portuguese-speaking countries. On these platforms, we collaborate with neighboring nations, Portuguese-speaking countries, and post-conflict states to enhance regional stability and prosperity. These arenas offer invaluable opportunities for dialogue, conflict prevention, and the exchange of best practices, reinforcing the principle that peace is a shared responsibility. Timor-Leste's participation in these forums exemplifies our dedication to fostering mutual understanding and cooperation, which are key foundations for lasting peace. We are reaffirming our commitment to multilateralism and diplomacy as essential pillars for achieving the sustaining peace. Our experiences demonstrate that collaborative strategies are effective in resolving immediate conflicts and crucial for building resilient societies that can face future challenges. On this International Day, we join others in calling for the renewal of our collective commitments to multilateralism, ensuring that diplomacy remains at the forefront of our efforts to create a peaceful and just global community. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much to the representative of Timor-Leste for his remarks. And now I recognize the Deputy Permanent Representative of Malaysia.
Malaysia aligns itself with the statement delivered by Uganda on behalf of the non-aligned movement. We commend the group of friends in defense of the Charter of the United Nations for organizing today's event. The theme of today's event speaks about the urgent need for unity. Through unity, we can advance multilateralism and diplomacy, and it is through unity that we can achieve peace and development for all. This is profoundly true. Multilateralism, which has been our shared principle and approach through decades of global challenges, now faces among its most rigorous trial. As our United Nations approach its 80th anniversary, it confronts an unprecedented questioning of its existence and faces threats to its survival, unlike we have seen before. We are seeing certain nations abandoning the principle of shared responsibility, while others are questioning the long-standing commitments to multilateralism, which have benefited humankind. History has demonstrated that no nation can truly thrive in isolation. No country can afford to abandon international cooperation. It is a mistake to conduct diplomacy based solely on arbitrary self-interest. Regrettably, these crucial lessons remain unheeded by certain countries in today's global landscape. It is up to us to close ranks and remain united, guided by the tried and tested principles of multilateralism and international cooperation to face the unprecedented challenges that threaten our collective future. As we often hear and are reminded in dialogues here in the United Nations, including today, there is no peace without development and no development without peace. We can achieve sustainable peace and development through a unity of purpose and through multilateralism. It has been done before, and this approach has never failed us. The path forward to a better future of peace and development requires unity over isolation, dialogue over confrontation, and shared responsibility over narrow self-interest. I thank you.
Thank you very much to the representative of Malaysia for his remarks. And now I recognize the Deputy Permanent Representative of Philippines.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Philippines aligns itself with the Statement of NAM delivered by Uganda. We thank the group of friends in defense of the Charter of the United Nations for convening this important commemorative event on International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace, with a theme on the transformative power of unity that truly resonates with the times. Allow me in this regard to share the following views. First, we reaffirm our enduring commitment to multilateralism. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. affirmed that multilateralism remains the single viable platform for collective action against transcendent global challenges. A profound lack of trust is putting enormous strains on our multilateral system. Our charter is being violated around the world. The integrity of the multilateral system must prevail amidst global challenges. The UN has held itself as the platform and pathway to address international peace and security. It serves as the ground for states to find convergence amidst crisis and conflict. It offers response and relief, hope, and humanity. The Philippines has and will always contribute to efforts and initiatives to make multilateralism more constructive, more inclusive, and fairer, working for the benefit of all and faithful to the principles of equality, non-aggression, non-interference, and peaceful coexistence. Second, we reaffirm our commitment to the Charter, its principles, and firm adherence to the rule of law among nations. We will continue to protect the principles that led to the establishment of the United Nations and to reject any attempt to deny or redefine our common understanding of these principles. The landmark 1970 Declaration on Principles of International Law concerning friendly relations among states represents our common understanding of these principles. Amidst challenging global tides, an important ballast stabilizes our common vessel, that is, our open, inclusive, and rules-based international order that is governed by international law and informed by the principles of equity and justice. The Philippines has exerted utmost efforts to reinforce the predictability and stability of international law, a great equalizer among states, in addressing challenges to peace and security. International law provides a strong basis for dialogue and consensus in addressing differences. This approach is consistent with the principle that states should settle their international disputes by peaceful means, as highlighted in the 1982 Manila Declaration on the Peaceful Settlement of International Disputes through the Special Committee on the Charter of the United Nations. Resort to international tribunals, which play a key role in the interpretation of international norms, should not be seen as an unfriendly act among civilized nations. Defending the Charter means adherence to its fundamental principles, compliance with international tribunals, as well as active engagement with the UN processes, including the Special Committee of the Charter of the United Nations, to ensure constructive outcomes. Finally, Mr. Chair, the Philippines has played a bridging role and moderating role in many multilateral settings and processes where polarities threaten consensus. It is a role that we're comfortable to play, and we will continue to play, given our overarching interest to foster international cooperation. In this regard, we see the continuing significance of the United Nations in ensuring a smooth transition amidst the shifts in the global order. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much to the representative of the Philippines for her remarks, and now I recognize the representative of the Republic of Tunisia.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Tunisia is honored to join this commemorative event marking the International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace, and it's an occasion to reflect collectively on the values that unite us and the path we must shape together for a more just, peaceful, and inclusive world. In recognition of this imperative, Tunisia has declared 2025 as the Year of Multilateralism. Through this initiative, we seek to reaffirm the primacy of international cooperation, dialogue, and solidarity in addressing global crises and advancing our shared aspirations for peace and development. This year's theme, the transformative power of unity,
resonates deeply with Tunisia's own journey and with our continued belief that no nation can face today's challenges alone. From climate change and food insecurity to artificial intelligence and digital inequality, our response must be collective, just, and inclusive. But unity must also mean justice, justice for all peoples, and particularly for those whose rights have long been denied. In this regard, Tunisia reaffirms its unwavering support for the Palestinian people, whose suffering continues amidst illegal occupation, indiscriminate violence, and deepening despair. A truly credible and effective multilateral order cannot remain silent and paralyzed in the face of such injustice. There can be no lasting peace without the realization of the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people, including the establishment of an independent state with Al-Quds Sharif as its capital, in line with international law and relevant UN resolutions. Our commitment to multilateralism also means championing gender equality as a cornerstone of peace and sustainable development. Tunisia continues to promote women's full, equal, and meaningful participation in decision-making at all levels. We firmly believe that peace is stronger when it's inclusive, and that development is more durable when it's driven by the voices and leadership of women and girls. We must also recognize the energy, ideas, and potential of youth, and the context of the 2030 Agenda, empowering young people to participate in diplomacy, innovation, and global governance is a strategic investment. As we look toward the 20th anniversary of the United Nations, this is a critical moment to revitalize our shared institutions. Tunisia supports a more democratic and representative multilateral system, one that gives greater voice to the countries of the Global South, that reforms the global financial architecture, and that ensures equity and access to development and technology. Multilateralism must evolve, but it must never lose its soul. It must remain anchored in the Charter, in international law, and in our shared humanity. Tunisia stands ready today and every day to work alongside all nations to uphold these principles, to translate dialogue into solidarity, rights into reality, and unity into transformation. I thank you.
Thank you very much to the representative of Tunisia for her remarks. And is there any other delegation that would like to speak now? I see that at this stage, there are no further requests for the floor. So I suggest that we move on to our closing segment, which includes the readout of a special communiqué that has been agreed by the member states of the Group of Friends in Defense of the Charter on the occasion of the International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace. For time's sake, we have distributed a copy of it, which is at your seat. We will also circulate it among all members of the General Assembly. Before closing our meeting, rest assured that the member states of the Group of Friends in Defense of the Charter of the United Nations will spare no effort in promoting multilateralism and fostering diplomacy for peace. To conclude, allow us to join others in expressing our deep condolences to all Catholics around the world as they mourn the passing away of His Holiness Pope Francis. I thank you all very much. This special event is adjourned.